People will hear you eating your chips. Okay. All right. Welcome to the DIY series, Navigating Showcases and Festivals at Manitoba Music. We are joined here by 3 panelists who have a lot of experience in this area. So I'm going to just go down and allow each one of them to introduce themselves to you. And I will start with you, Robyn. And actually, when you introduce yourself, if you could just kind of let us know a little bit about your journey into the position you're in now and some of the experience that you have with festivals and with showcases and music in general.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm Robyn Stewart. Oh, microphone, of course, you just said that. So I'm Robyn Stewart. I run the Western Canadian Music Alliance and BreakOut West Festival and Conference with a great team here in Winnipeg. My journey, I actually started in theater and quickly came to work with WCMA early in my career, but then I ran the conference for a few years, and then I left and went and booked music for the Olympics and for Vancouver 125 and a few other events, and as a talent buyer, and then came back to BreakOut West. So, started and ended in a similar place so far, but I've got experience both on the showcase side with BreakOut West and with the talent buying for large scale festivals like the Olympics, Panamania, and stuff like that. There you go.
Hi, I'm Oriane. I am starting my new position as events and marketing at the Association of Independent Music in London, UK. And I guess how I got into music, kind of on a fluke. When I was 18, I met a lady on a bus who liked me and introduced me to her friend who ran a sync licensing agency, and I started interning there, and then they hired me. And then from there I started working at a festival, and then went and moved on to a label, and then now I'm at an association. So yeah, kind of that's been my journey, I guess.
It's crazy. It's the first found on a bus. Discovered on a bus. Love it. I'm Michael Falk. I book the Jazz Festival. I also have a couple side gigs where I co-own Paintbox Recording with Lloyd Peterson and Rusty Mattias, and I have a company called Head in the Sand, where we have been a label and management and events company for, I don't know, since 2009. Through that company, we've done a whole bunch of different things. We did the Spaceland block parties. We put out records, managed a couple artists. There's kind of like it's a constant moving target of jobs there. And then I was in a band for a number of years, and as a musician have toured all over, and I've been on both sides of the showcase and festival conversation as both an artist and an industry person, or like the so
awesome. Okay, great. So we're gonna just jump right into this. If anyone has questions throughout, feel free to put your hand up. We can keep this as mostly a discussion, I think. I don't mind interrupting it because I know that this is sort of an area where people do have a lot of questions. So first, before we get totally started, would one of you be able to explain the difference between a festival and a showcasing festival?
100%.
I'm staring right at you.
So a festival, is usually is a for-profit festival, is what we're talking about. Their goal is to market ticket sales and to drive ticket sales and to get their audience in front of the bands that are going to bring in money. That's the real focus, and it drives their marketing plan timelines and their focus on who they're going to book. There are some for-profit festivals that do dabble in artist development in terms of saying, okay, we're going to book artist A, B, C to drive ticket sales, and then we're going to give some younger artists a chance at the bottom of the bill, which is great. And there's a really positive spot for that as well. Whereas showcase festivals, if they are selling tickets to the public, that's probably the last thing on their to-do list, because the first thing on the to-do list is getting the industry in front of the artists who are going to be there primed to work with those artists at the right time in their career. And so that's probably where most of their budget goes, if not all of it. And the in that realm, their drive on which artist to book is also very different, because they want to match it up with various things in their planning. So whether it's matching it up with the artists who are primed and ready to work with the industry they're bringing in, who are going to do really great in that market, and in I know that I sound like I'm sort of leaning towards showcase festivals because that's what I work with, but their goal, their core focus is the artists, whereas the open festival, their core focus is the audience. And it's not to say that one doesn't think about the other, but that's really what's driving their budget and what's driving their success.
Thank you. Now, Oriane, you actually used to, with them for Montreal, you were the person who booked the industry professionals to come. Okay, so just the question for you is, did you book the industry professionals first, and then the festival kind of matched, who was going to be there with artists that would actually be of interest to them? Like, what was the order of that?
I think it kind of happened organically over time. I guess M for Montreal was taking place mid-November. By February, we were starting to think about like what was going on in the world, and like who, I think Mikey was starting to think about bands, and like we set up like a call for people to submit. And then I was starting to think about like kind of breakdowns of like, how many bookers do we want? How many festivals do we want? And then I think it was close, like I would usually send out invites starting post South by. And I think I was always keeping in mind like demographics of things. But I really think it happens organically. But yes, it's true that I think M for Montreal, showcasing a lot of Montreal and Canadian talent, tends to have an indie vibe to it. And so I wasn't inviting like a ton of techno labels or something. That was always a priority, is to bring people who were actually going to be interested in the music and who could actually I don't know if this is, I'm probably going on a tangent right now, but I think there's also a very big difference with inviting relevant industry and inviting big names that might, like, the CEO of some very large booking agent might look really good on paper, but that person is the least likely to sign an artist at a showcase. And you're much better off getting 2 junior agents from that same agency. So that's, but that was a tangent.
Cool.
But
no, that was good.
I feel very strong about it.
That's good inside info for everybody, because I've always wondered how that process works as well, and how you choose people, and that's really good to know. So this will be, I guess, a question for all of you, or anyone who wants to answer this one. But what are the things that, like most festivals are asking for a submission. So what are the things on those applications that you're looking for? We'll break it down, because Mike, you can speak more on just the festival side. What are you looking for on the festival side in an application? And then on the showcasing side, what are the things that you're looking for in an application?
Sure. It's a tricky question, because what leads an artist to get booked at the festival is different for almost every artist in some ways, right? Obviously, if an artist has an agent, then those agents come to me. But if you're a local artist without an agent and you're going through our submission process, there's a kind of handful of things that I, kind of prioritize, and then from there, at the end of the day, I have rules that are always being broken, I guess. So I guess at the end of the day is the music. Do I like the music? That's kind of ground zero, is always, is this music I want to support? And then from there is how many people want to come and see this music? Whether it's, Are we going to put this in a ticketed environment? If so, how many tickets do we think we can sell? If we're going to put it on the free stage, will they be able to bring some people out to the free stage? And then, so that's part of the equation. Then there's the, do they have their shit together question? And you would be surprised. A lot of people don't. And so, you know, that's the, are their websites, have their websites been updated? Are their social media platforms active? Do they, how active are they in the community? How active are they in their career? And I think especially at the Jazz Festival, it's a trickier thing because it's a different niche in the way that different from the way rock bands or folk acts or anybody else in town normally works, because the nature of the venues is different. And so, you know, I kind of look at it, and there's kind of two. I look at the jazz acts through one lens in that regard, then I look at the kind of indie rock or folk or roots or blues acts that I might book through a different lens, usually in that capacity. But the you know, where are they career wise? That's part of it. And then there's the always nebulous, you know, all other reasons to book them, right? Like, what is there some engaging story? Is there some personal connection? Or is there something that they're doing that warrants our support as a festival? Is there something that, you know, that we're excited about, whether it's them as an artist or them as a person or them as a, you know, their role in the community, whatever it is, you know, that kind of intangible, you know, make it up as you go forth column. So, so those are kind of like the four things that I look for. And, you know, and sometimes someone is like, you know, has none of the four and still gets booked, and sometimes someone has all four of them and doesn't get booked. So it's, you know, I guess there's, you know, there's no hard rules.
Can you explain more about the having your shit together thing? What does that mean, and why is that so important for you to see immediately?
It tells me how seriously you take it, and so, you know, so what you're asking me is to invest Jazz Winnipeg's money in your career and put, you know, and to pay you money to give you some time on our stage to perform for our audience, and in the hopes that you and our audience will connect, and that we'll, you know, that we'll be able to kind of give our audience a really great experience, and that you as an artist can grow, and that hopefully in an ideal world those things happen symbiotically. So that's kind of like the end goal. But, you know, to get there, and for me to trust that that is a worthwhile investment, or at least a trustworthy investment, like, it's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, it's your website, it's your social media, it's, do people care about your music? Do you have, are you crazy? You know, like that, do you come off as crazy? If you come off as crazy, then that hurts your, I don't know. Yeah, so like, I mean, all the other stuff, like, I look at YouTube views, I look at SoundCloud listens and spins, I look at Spotify plays, you know, and like, what is the artist's profile in all of those places? You know, none of them are make or break. You know, someone might have no presence on Spotify or no presence on YouTube, and it might, you know, especially in our local jazz community, that might, there's lots of artists that don't have that, but they can still bring out people for, you know, like there's some Latin bands in town that don't have any real online presence, but we'll still bring out some people. And so, yeah, so that's the bulk of it. I'm probably missing a few things, but it's basically like the question that drives anything that I'm looking at under that, like, do you have your shit together question, is how seriously do you take it? Is this your career? Is this what, you know, is it obvious that you want to do this for your life? And if you want to do this for your life, how are you doing that, and what shape is that taking? And if you don't want to do it for your life, well then maybe you get the gig, maybe you don't. So.
Great. And then on the other side, for showcasing festivals, you are probably looking for a few different things. What are some of the things that you're looking for in applications?
Yeah, a lot of the things that Mike said are the same. We want to see that your socials are there, that you have a fair amount of following in your local community, that you are working your career. I would say I echo almost everything he said, but I would add a few extra things. For BreakOut West specifically, we look also at not just are you doing this as your career and this is going to mean a lot to you, but are you going to work while you're there? Because our event and most events that are showcase also have conferences or also have one-on-one meeting opportunities or networking opportunities and various things. And those hand in hand with showcasing is really the full package of that event. And I'd love to, on a personal level, we want to book the best music, and we get really excited in our office when an artist calls us afterwards or industry and says, hey, I just booked this great show because they saw me at BreakOut. And we love that. We want more and more and more of that. But the reality is, on top of that, our funders do too. So we want to know that we want to be able to see in your application what your goal is for the event. We added that question about 2 years ago. And to our submission process, what's your goal with playing BreakOut West? And the first year we put it out, we had a number of artists, I kid you not, that put to play a kick-ass show, and that was their goal. And I'm glad that was part of their goal, but that can't be the whole piece of your goal, because we need to know what that means to you. So if it's like, hey, we want to put on the best show of our life, and then we want to meet with with agents because I really want to get an agent, well, that's a whole answer to us. And so it's some of those questions that are a little different that you may not see on other things or be used to answering that are actually the most important on a showcase festival, because we want to know that you're going there for a purpose. We get about 500 applications a year, and we pick 50 acts out of that. So it's a very different jury process, and it's not straight curated. It goes through jury. And on top of that, the other thing that we also take some clout on is, because BreakOut West, we work with all of the different provinces and territories, MIAs, we want to see that year-round you're taking steps in your career. So coming to things like this, getting involved with your MIA and getting involved with the things that are going to help your career year-round, then it gives us a good sign that you're probably going to do the same when you get to us. So really, taking seriously all those questions, because we're not just asking it for fun. But those are the extra pieces that are really on top of that, because we want to make sure that we're giving the opportunities to the people who are really going to take advantage of them and do the best with it. With our festival, everyone plays twice, and it's best really if no artist is looking at it. If we've turned down a lot of artists that are, bigger names, have a great following, but we know that they're going to come to town, they're going to drive in an hour before the show, they're going to play the show, and then they're going to get out of town and go to the next show. And that's awesome for them, but if that's what they want to do, they should just play it 2 days before and do your tour, because it's not really a fit for what we're doing. Because we know that if they don't stick around, people are going to go and see a wicked show and they're going to love it, and there's no follow-up. So we just want to see the artists who are really going to work that.
And just to break down what MIA is, that's a music industry association. So like Manitoba Music, Sask Music, Alberta Music. So, you have a question? Give me 1 sec.
This feels weird. We hear the term export ready thrown around a lot. Like if your band is export ready. I was just wondering if we could get a concrete definition for what that means.
I can probably say a little bit on that. Export ready kind of just generally means it's a nicer way of saying has their shit together. And I think, they're both we're stressing how important it is to show the people that are booking you that not only that you want this, but that you're ready for this. And I know that sounds kind of that's kind of a loose term. Of course you can say of course I'm ready for this. You can say that, but actually meaning it and wanting it and hustling for it is very, very different reality. I don't think socials are always the most important thing. I did see a few people were kind of your faces were okay, socials are super important. I don't think that's the top priority. You don't need 10K followers on Facebook to get booked for any of this stuff. But export ready means that you have, first of all, that you have a band in place. A lot of musicians start a musical project and don't have a band in place. Second of all, have you recorded a record? Have you recorded an EP? Have you recorded anything? Or is all your music just from, a few times where you used your laptop mic? Again, this is not always make or break. I mean, you look at artists like Clairo, who put out some songs on SoundCloud that she made on her Mac, and then was Fader featured, and Fader 4, and South by Babe. So obviously this is not for everyone, but I think the majority of the time, having music that's properly recorded, having wanting to go on tour and having a band that's ready to tour, maybe even having a manager in place, that's always awesome when we see someone who has someone pushing for them.
Trustworthy.
Yeah, because I think also a lot of times a lot of this falls onto an artist to get together, and I think that it's unfair to always assume that every artist is going to be super outgoing and ready to do everything. And having someone who is outgoing on your team who can do that for you, and you can focus on your music. So having someone that you trust who can hustle for you if you're not ready to hustle. And yeah, that's export ready in my book.
I would agree with all of that. I just want to add one little thing. Because some festivals have a lot of government funding, export ready is a term that Factor coined. And their definition of it is that you've had an album out that's in cycle, and their cycle is in the past 24 months, that you have at least 2 of your industry team in place, and self-managed, as long as you are legitimately managing yourself, can count in there. And that you, what's the third one? Oh, that you have a tour history within your market at least. Or within the Canadian market, and those are sort of the on paper definitions that they give us. And I wouldn't say that 100% of the artists we book meet all of those criteria, but we have to make sure that a certain number of them do, so that we can put that on paper. That's all.
I think it's important too for artists to understand the reason for that term export ready, and the reason that you get chosen for that is you're being put in front of industry people who, if they want to work with you, it's going to go from 0 to 100. So if you're not doing anything and you're not showing that you have a record of being able to keep up even with yourself, they're not going to be interested in you anyways. So that's kind of the whole point, is that if you think you're busy now, adding a team member is you're actually going to get busier. So that's really why they want to make sure that you are export ready. Do you still have a question?
No, you kind of answered it with the get your shit together. That's such a loose thing. It's do you want team members? Because I see so many bands here that are export ready under the loose.
No, you're absolutely right, because you could be a band that's had 5 albums out, but the last one was 4 years ago. So on paper, it doesn't qualify anymore. Yeah, for example.
Okay, awesome. Does anyone have any more questions just on anything that was just discussed just now? Yeah, give me a sec.
It's not that.
It's fine.
Just a quick question for you, Oriane. Could you explain what AIM is, and what exactly the organization is, and what it entails?
Yeah, sure. So I just took this position with the Association of Independent Music. It's a trade body, basically, that represents the independent music community in Great Britain. Yeah. So SEMA's a Canadian independent music. I think so. It's like A2IM, which is the American. Okay, yeah, SEMA. Okay, yeah. So I haven't started yet, so we'll see. But
she'll be great at it. Actually, this is a great segue because I met Oriane at M for Montreal, and then I would just run into her at like showcasing festivals around the world, and she's like a showcasing festival warrior and always knows everybody there and has industry around her and knows all the shows to go to. So I want to ask you, if you're an artist and you're selected to play a showcase, what is it that, you know, like I've played showcases in the past and had no one show up despite invites and stuff, you know, like with my last band, and I see that happen to artists all the time, and they spend all this money going out there and have all these expectations, and they send out invites and nobody comes. So what is it that an artist needs to do in order to get that attention? And like, can you give us some examples of some success stories that you've seen?
Yeah. So expectations for showcases are always kind of one of the most heartbreaking things, honestly, to me. It actually breaks my heart. I think it depends on the showcase. I think that's also something that there's very different types of showcase events. And walking into a showcase event, you need to kind of, first of all, know who is there and know what type of, like, are you going to be showcased in a way where no one else is playing at the same time, or are there going to be 20 other bands playing at the same time at different venues all over the city? Because that can change things drastically. I think that the best way for an artist to get noticed, honestly, at a showcase is to go and try and spend. A lot of these showcase events are set up so that artists can meet industry outside of showcases. Go and meet them, talk to them, make them laugh, become their friends, and then like literally get their number and text them and be like, hey, I'm playing here at this time. I think also it depends, I guess, how many, some showcases events will put you on multiple times. If you're going to a showcase event and you're only playing once and you're spending a lot of money, I would recommend not to, actually. Spending a lot of money to play once to potentially no one is gonna be the biggest bummer of your life. I think most showcase events do like a 2-play thing. M for Montreal does a 2-play thing. You do as well. South by, if you only get one showcase, don't go. Just do not show up. CMW.
Should I say fuck it right now? Or?
How many shows do you have? Do you have one showcase?
What time and what room?
1 in the morning.
Don't go.
Don't go. Don't go.
Oh, damn.
Don't go.
1 in the morning showcases are the worst.
Yeah. Don't go.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Even midnight showcases, like.
There's some people I want to meet. So.
So I'll bring people. It's okay.
and like the other thing I would like.
True. Like, I think the biggest thing, you have to actively, if you get one showcase at a showcase event, you have to, as like, even if it's not booking a show within the festival, like literally like do DIY house shows. Every single showcase event has DIY pop-ups everywhere. Just find those house shows, find whatever it is, email all the people you know, hit up band friends. If they're playing a show, maybe you could like open, or like they'll hit up the booker who booked them and be like, hey, we've got, hustle hard to get as many shows as you can. The bands that do the best are the ones that play like, okay, at South by, the bands that do the best are the ones that do 6 to 12 shows in 4 days. Total insanity. The most brutal thing you could ever do. You're gonna hate yourself, but that happened with Shame for us at Secretly, happened with like Soccer Mommy this year. Heinz is a good example of someone who did that. They played 4 shows every day for 5 days at South by. Heinz did. Yeah. And they were like suddenly, you know, top of the world.
Landers did that.
Yeah, it's you gotta, yeah.
It's impossible to drive in Austin, so you're carrying your gear 3 blocks for your showcase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like totally forgot the question.
Oh, it was just how to make, get industry to the show and how to basically how to make the most of that that showcase opportunity.
Yeah. I would say if you are going to CMW or you've got your plans in place and you've got 1 a.m. show, you said you also have people you want to meet, but maybe you can do a little private something if there's like a small group of people you want to meet, like maybe it's a hotel show or a hotel room show or something, like for some targeted people, or or maybe you go like 2 days early and you try and play at an agency and just like pop to them or something, like try and figure out all the things that you can do around it. Same idea that you're saying.
The one thing we were kind of talking about at the back before we started officially was just like what you talked about, like in terms of make people laugh, is that this is an industry of friends, and it's and so I think like we talk about words like networking and connections and all this stuff. At the end of the day, it's just you're just making friends with people, and it's something that especially when I was on the artist side of the equation. That's how I approached every industry showcase. It was just like, hey, I'm gonna go make some new friends today. We might have things in common, we might not. We're gonna just like go hang out and have some drinks, and and I think expectations in those scenarios can be really, really treacherous. And so if you just walk into like, maybe I'm gonna hang out with this person, we'll get to know each other. They might not be able to do anything for me now, next year, 2 years from now, but like there's people that I have relationships with now that been going on for 8 or 10 years, and like sometimes some of those doors open at different times in your career, but keeping those relationships is valuable. So
yeah, I think one thing that people don't notice is that the music industry is the smallest industry. So
don't talk shit.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I think the biggest lesson that I could ever impart on anyone, doesn't matter what they're doing, as long as it's in the music industry, is work hard and be nice. Always be nice. Doesn't matter who it is. If they're an asshole, maybe don't, but
No, still be nice to assholes. They might still help you.
Still be nice. They might help you.
I literally have that saying on my wall at work. No joke. It's honestly
very true.
Yeah. One of that's such a good point about just being friends and not having expectations, because I think in the past when I was with Pipe and Hat, artists would come up and just give me like CDs and business cards immediately, and I'm like, dude, I already work with 7 incredible artists that are probably better than you, and I don't want this shit. Like, I don't have room in my suitcase. I want to bring home souvenirs. Like, and it was just, if I'm sure they were nice people, and if they would have just said, like, hey, like, who are you? Like, do you have a child? Do you have a cat? Like, you get to know them and you become their friends. You go for drinks with them, and that can be daunting for some people who aren't good at networking and aren't personable, and it's fine if you're not that person, but then you need to find someone in your band who is, or you need to find a friend that wants to go to these things and work for you if you don't have a manager. If you're not going to be that person, you just need to find that person. And sometimes that's just a discussion you have to have with your band is, who's going to go to these things and who's going to be the face of this band. And I've seen drummers do it before, and I've seen bassists do it before, because not every lead singer wants to be that person either, so that's fine. But thank you so much for talking about that. That's so huge. Does anyone have questions about this at all?
If you're good at house parties, you'll be good at the music industry.
Yes, it's actually just like high school. Like if you're like the most fun person in the room, that's going to be the best thing you can do for sure.
It's high school for weirdos though.
Yeah.
Right? It's like everyone knows a weirdo in high school gets to like have their own little
a bunch of nerds who like really like music, but yeah.
So true.
It's the weirdo house party in high school.
That's so true. Okay, I have so many questions here that I'm trying to rifle through and see what, is going to be the best one to ask. Well, in talking about preparation and to make the most of the opportunity, how can artists be best prepared before going to the festival? do email invites work? And if they do work, like, what should those look like? How many times do you follow up? Like, what do you do beforehand?
I would suggest email invites work if they're personal. If you're sending out a mass email to everybody, and so you have like an electronic festival buyer getting your mail and you're getting your email and you're a folk singer, it's not going to work, and it's actually going to work against you.
Delete.
Sorry?
Delete.
Yes, right? Because I get countless emails before an event starts, and it just floods my email, and I will respond to some, but I very much notice which ones are relevant. Because if somebody's emailing me saying, would really like you to come see our show, here's the info, and then it's just a pasted image below, and it says nothing about me, and it's an artist from South Korea who wants to play my festival, which they haven't even put my festival name in, and haven't taken 2 seconds to realize I don't book South Korean acts, which happens all the time. Not just South Korea, I'm not picking on them, but I mean, I just got back from Tallinn, Estonia, and the number of acts I got from Russia and Finland and Sweden and South Korea, and we don't book those acts. If you had gone onto my site and went, hey, like, you work with everyone across Western, like with a whole bunch of industry across Western Canada, and you emailed me and said, hey, I work with this act from South Korea and they have a lot of interest in breaking into Canada. Can we meet while we're there and have you check them out so you can give me some advice as to who they should talk to get booked in Canada? Then I'm going to respond, because I know you've taken 2 seconds to figure out that I can't personally book you, but I probably know a lot of people that can help you get here. So and take some time, not like 2 days before the event, because that's when their emails are flooded. So look like a month before and start your research then, and start looking at, okay, here's like, figure out something manageable to you. Go, okay, I'm going for 3 days. Let me pick 10 or 12 like really great people I want to meet, that there's a reason I want to meet with them, and find something in common with them. And it might be about your music and what they can do for your music. It might be that they, also liked a really cool thing on Facebook that you liked. I mean, try and find something so that they know right away this is not an auto send.
Yeah, that like 100%. I think also, like, yeah, emails before a festival can be really difficult, just because the person's trying to get as much work as done possible before going to basically fall heavily behind on work. So sending out 2 to 3 weeks before a personal email to someone that is relevant to you, and like actually then you're able to also start a conversation if they answer back before the festival. I think also when you're looking for those top 10, 12 people, look for the top 10, 12 people that are relevant to you, and not always the top 10 to 12 people that are like maybe the top of their like I said before, the CEOs are usually not the ones that are going to be able to help you. Look for that junior agent at an agency who is at the festival literally scouting for bands to sign. Look for the people that are actually going to help your career. Look for the label that maybe is not the biggest label, but like, I don't know, maybe this is your first album or your second album, so you're not looking for like the mega label. You're looking for a label that is going to invest in you, that wants to that has put out music that is also within your oeuvre, I guess. Because the people that actually end up helping you, and actually, like, you'd be surprised. I see a lot of artists will, like, run to the top people because it's, like, so cool to meet these, the agents or the labels that work with, like, the biggest bands. But those are people that usually are not going to end up helping you. Yeah, they have a very different system of filtering people out, I think, or artist filtration.
Artist filtration.
Yeah, meet their assistants. Actually, good way to meet someone. Meet their assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's great. So Mike, for you on the for more just the festival side. So not speaking about industry, speaking on the level of when you book someone, you have a certain expectation for what they're going to do before they perform. What are some of the things that an artist can do to impress you, to make you think, oh, they're a great act to book for my festival, and I'm really excited that they're playing?
Well, I think what happens on stage is most important. Like, that is, is the show interesting? Are people excited about the show? And I think, and there's kind of two prongs to that. There's the, as a talent buyer and kind of artist assessor, did I like the show? There's that assessment, but then there's also the audience reaction, and I think a lot about how audiences and artists connect, and so that audience reaction is really important to me. So monitoring the audience, monitoring people's reactions on whether it's social media, whether it's our website, whether it's then them buying tickets for someone's second show, or kind of different ways that and like chatter during the festival always comes back to us, right? Because someone if someone has a really great show, even if I'm at some other venue, one of my fellow staff will be like, oh, this act is killing it, they're great, or we're hearing great things back in the office about this artist. So so we definitely get a lot of with any festival, there's just lots of chatter around an act that can happen, and so obviously if we hear positive chatter, that's a good sign. Leading up to the festival, we want to make sure that artists are owning and excited about the show, especially the local artists. We want to see them promoting it on all of their channels, and really trumpeting it to their audiences, right, and to their fan bases. And so that's something we want to see. And then also how you advance a show. And I think that relationship, it actually, it probably carries more weight than most artists realize, is like how mad you make my production manager, or how happy you make him, right? So Alistair is our production manager. He advances all of our most of our local shows, and it's like, if your stage plot comes in 2 different emails and there's, I don't know, everything's a mess, or you wrote it on a napkin, or whatever, or you take 3 weeks to respond, you take months to respond, and it takes 5 emails to finally get a response from you for some pretty basic stuff. That doesn't that doesn't look good, and it doesn't. We want to work with people that it comes back to having your shit together, I guess. But on that production side, do you respond to emails timely? Do you address all of the questions that were asked you in those emails? That's an important one. I don't want to ask you 5 questions, get 3 answers back, and then have to, come back for the next 2 every couple weeks. Come on, I need this other information.
Thank you for saying this.
Yeah, it's because there's all these logistics to making the festival happen, and so I think that stage plot, that input list. If you have a rider for your show, if you're doing a ticketed show and there's a rider, then all of those things being in place and being stuff is a big pain in the butt. And there are artists that I booked last year. It was my first time booking the Jazz Festival last year, and there's some people that I was like, what? You just kind of how do you, and then it's like, okay, well, we'll just, it's going to be a little harder for them to get a gig again if we have to chase them with 5 emails in 3 months. So it's, yeah.
Yes, I'm happy you said that, because I book for a stage as well, and it's very frustrating when you send out a contract and you put in bold, please fill in all of the blanks, and then you have to still go back to that person, and sometimes it just makes me want to be like, you know what, you didn't fill in all the blanks, so but I don't. But it just takes so much time, because everyone who works in the music industry is overworked, and it just takes, if we had to do that for every single person in the festival, it just wouldn't be possible to make it as good. So that is so huge, read every line answer everything, and being prompt about the answers is, it's super rude to submit for something and then you get an email and it takes 2 weeks for you to say that you'll even play after you've been given that offer, because there are so many other artists that would have jumped at that opportunity. And once the offer is already extended, it's hard for us to be like, oh, never mind. But yeah, it definitely puts a bad taste in the mouth of the people who are booking you, and we all talk, so don't do that. Okay, so actually let's talk a little bit about etiquette, since we're on the subject. So etiquette of both festivals and showcases. There are so many acts that are playing. What are some of the things, I guess we should say some of the do's and the do nots, like showing up, and how do you behave with the sound tech, the other bands, the people who are in the room, just all of that?
Be smart, be nice, and yeah, just always be nice. Honestly, it's like not even worth it if you're not nice. Etiquette is a big one. I think also major alert: never be creepy. And I know that I think the etiquette, there's different types of etiquette. Within a venue, it's a little different. And I know that there's, sound guys get a bad rep. And I think like being as polite as possible in that world. But also like standing up for yourself. This is actually mostly targeted as female artists. Am I allowed to say this here?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay. When you're a female artist and a sound guy is not listening to you and he keeps turning to your drummer, who's a dude, even though you know exactly what inputs you want, you need to stand up for yourself. And then when he comes up after the show and is like, wow, you were amazing, just be like, thank you. Because that's how we do, right? Yeah, if you're a DJ and someone starts messing with your dials, tell them to fuck off, but then be nice to them and buy them a drink. Or not, actually. But yeah, and so there's like etiquette within the venues, and then there's etiquette with, I think, with industry, like you're always looking to be nice to everyone and kind of become their friend, but also like there are boundaries, don't, like I think there's a difference between like meeting someone and becoming their friend and like overwhelming someone. Yeah, like like when it becomes overwhelming and like they start looking panicked, like it's time to back away. Yeah.
Would you do that to your regular friends? If maybe. If not, then maybe chill out a bit.
And if you're doing showcasing, I know a lot of the artists in Canada do showcasing internationally. So if you're going to a showcase festival in in Europe or in Germany, in Australia, and you're there with like 4 or 5 other artists from Canada, and you're all doing a showcase together, it's probably a really good idea also to, it's probably a new territory for all, if not or most of you, to stick around. Like, don't just go to your show and then like screw off and go do like tourism stuff. Like, stay for the show and hang out and like maybe have a dinner together. Because you can find, especially in those places where you have a small group of like, just a handful of artists and groups, where you can find some special things. Because a lot of the time with a festival like BreakOut, where we've got like 50 to 60 acts, we totally get you're not necessarily going to be able to stay around for the whole showcase. It's nice to support the other artists on your bill, but if you have other things to get to within whether it's meetings with industry, whatever it is, that's kind of understood. But if you're going to a bill where it's like a Canada showcase and there's 6 of you and you're playing, it's a really great idea to stay there for the whole showcase and support those artists and tour with them. And I found some really great things come out of that. Last year we did a show in Talon where we had a couple acts from Nova Scotia and a couple from Western Canada, and there was this like heavy rock band, the Stanfields from Nova Scotia, and we had a hip hop artist from Saskatchewan playing with us, and at the end of the night they went out and did a bunch of like video recordings of like the violin player with the like beatboxer and like doing some really cool stuff around downtown Talon, and it was really awesome, and they got some super great like social media out of it. Like there's really fun opportunities to be found there. This year we went and did a dinner in the basement of a pirate ship. It was really awesome. But I mean, these are the fun things you can tell about that your fans back home don't get to see. So like when you're doing international stuff, really take advantage of the other artists that are there as well.
I would also say, from a stage management point of view as well, when there are so many acts playing, it's extremely rude to go over the time that was allotted to you. And I will straight up tell the sound tech to unplug you if that happens ever on the stage. This goes for every show, but especially for festivals and showcases. There's so many people to get in. The changeover is very quick. That's the other thing, is when you're changing over, don't take your time. Don't sit there and wrap chords. You take your pedal board off, you take your chords off, and then you wrap them on the side of the stage so the next band can get up. That's just, as a musician, as someone who's been on the side of a stage, and as a stage producer, that drives me absolutely insane. And especially when you're trying to keep things on track, and if you go over your time and you take forever to get off the stage, that's going to feed into the next act's time. And again, we all talk, so don't do that. Okay, yeah, we'll go over that as well. So just the etiquette of being turned down. So when you get turned down from playing a festival, we will talk about that. That's another thing that I wanted to ask a few questions about. That is, artists get very offended when they are not selected. And I've been on both sides of the coin now as well. My band applies for everything, and we got into 2 things this summer, so that just gives you an idea of how often we also get turned down. So I'm not speaking from a point of not understanding. I completely understand, but I get it differently now. So first, before we go into the etiquette of that, let's talk about maybe the back end and like some of the things, as someone who curates a festival, or as people who have maybe been on juries or have seen how juries operate, what are some of those back end things that people are maybe not understanding or realizing? Like, what are those? There are definitely check boxes that you have to check off when you're booking these things.
I think and everyone knows everyone, and so yeah, if you get denied of a show, it could be any number of reasons, and you usually don't find out why. But to trying to be diplomatic here, or like say it the right way. Yeah, it's not easy, and I mean, and I've been declined shows, and I get that, and it's like, and I fully feel like I understand that kind of like that emotional connection rejection thing that happens as an artist, but I think that you can be a professional about it, or you can be a teenager about it, and I think that the difference there is, and so like I think especially in a small city like this, but in most cities. The industry is some radio people, some festival buyers, some venues, some whoever, and everybody kind of knows everybody. And so I think, especially if you want to, we'll just speak from some recent personal experience, go on social media and kind of lambaste the festival for whatever reasons, people see that, right? It comes back to the festival, and so. Yeah, so I think, and then that also impacts your ability to get booked in the future, right? So, why would Jazz Winnipeg invest its money in an artist who just yells at us on social media or something, right? So if you think about it, like if we take it totally out of, I like to kind of take non-music industry examples sometimes. So like, let's say you work for a refrigeration company, and and your refrigeration company, you know, or like you want to get this job at this refrigeration company, you just come out of a refrigeration school, and you know, and they turn you down for a job and say, you know what, really liked your application. Thanks, we're full right now, but you know, but we'll keep your application on file, yada yada yada. And you go out and on Facebook, you're like, I hate this refrigeration company. Then why would that refrigeration company give you a job, right? If you worked at Investors Group and you're at Investors Group, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't believe Investors Group supports, you know, these community outreach associations, or Investors Group, I can't believe the corporate, you know, environment at Investors Group. You're going to get fired, right? So I think to take that approach of, you know, recognizing that that you're applying for a job, in a sense, and so
they'll keep your resume just in a different file.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, my blacklist grew this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to remember with Showcase Festival specifically is that there's so many different things that go into the selection of that. That it's of all things, it's if you don't get in, don't be offended, because it definitely is not just about your music. It has a lot of things to do with it. It could be that you played that festival the year before and they're wanting to mix it around and they just had far too many names. I mean, like I said, we have about 500. We can, you know, relatively simply start narrowing it down to about half that, but then after that it gets really difficult, and we really we listen to everything. Johnny listens to everything, and we go through it all, and we really start looking at, okay, who's best positioned right now. Like, it might be, okay, you know what, they just put out an album like last week, or they've got it coming out right at the event. They would get a lot of great, you know, success out of, you know, being part of the event, but that, you know, it's just not the top of, you know, the top 50. But you know, there's a lot of reasons. It is okay to ask about your decline from that festival, but I would highly recommend not doing it a week before the event, or right in the middle of this, like right away. You know, it might be something to do right after that event happens, or sometime in the middle of the summer where, you know, they might have a bit more time, or even just reaching out and saying, hey, you know, I'd love to chat to you sometime about how I can be more prepared next year, or if there was something that, you know, that I didn't quite hit the mark. And it may in a lot of cases be, you know what, your application was great, your goals were great, everything was good. It's just that, you know, we really needed to spread around, you know, you know, realistically, when I say 50 artists, we're talking about like 8 from Manitoba. And when we have, 100 acts from Manitoba apply, that's really slim. And a lot of the time, we're not just picking the ones that have the, you know, biggest Twitter followers, or the ones that have, there's so many things to go into that. So it really isn't something to be offended by. I know it's personal, and I totally get that. But there's a lot of details in that, and I also would recommend, if you are an artist who has applied for a festival, especially if it's if you haven't played it in the past, and you have you know, your goals are based around, like, I want to meet some great agents, or I want to, you know, I want to find out more about what labels would be right for me. Really consider whether there's value in going anyway, even if you're not playing. And then above that, maybe you can find some opportunity to play. I mean, it's, you know, it's not as common, but we had a woman in Regina who didn't get accepted for festival, and so she decided to volunteer instead. So she would get a pass to be part of the conference, and she would go and help out with the conference, and then she invited a couple industry to a little hotel room showcase and got a booking out of it. Like, it was pretty great. I mean, you know, or we've had bands, like, you know, do some really tactful busking around the festival, or you know, and just going and getting, like, it doesn't mean that event is just off the shelf for you. You know, it may, I understand financially, but I think, you know, look at, is there some support I can get because I have a plan in place of what I'm going to do while I'm there? There probably is in some cases. So I would say, don't take offense, and if that really is something that's on your target, consider going anyway.
That's good advice.
Yeah, just an example, like for South by, my band applied for a couple of years. We always got turned down. And then one year I was like, you know what? I just want to go like figure out what South by is all about, and just went down and hung out for the week. And we were like, oh, okay, I see what this madness is. And then when we did start playing South by, then I had a frame of reference for how to make that useful for us and make that valuable for us, and know kind of what to expect going in, and know just how hard it was going to be to get anyone to want to see us or come see us, or to think about like if we end up at this bar or this slot or this, like then all of a sudden, okay, how are we going to approach it from that angle? So there's value in, I did that with BreakOut West when I was a young kid. Like there's value in just going to meet people, right, and start that process. So
yeah, I think taking it personally is also, it's like getting rejected from a university that you applied to, and getting, it's getting upset at the university for not accepting you. It's not necessarily a reflection of like how talented or smart you are. It's a lot of it is budget. I think every festival wants to book thousands of bands, but there's just no budget for it. And then there's like time constraints, there's venue constraints, there's also like breakdowns, like you're targeting, I don't know, you can only book 8 bands from Manitoba, and not all of them can be folk. You need one folk singer, you need a rap group, and then you need like a metal band. And if there's only like 2 indie bands that are being booked from Manitoba out of like 50 that applied, don't take it personally that yours wasn't the one, because I think a lot of the times they might have just had one other thing, like maybe their album was being released at that time, maybe they already had a label, maybe they had like a manager and you were self-managed, and it's just that little thing that next year it could be you. Just don't take it personally.
Yeah, I think it depends too, like on who else is applying, because if you apply the same year as like 15 other bands that are way more developed and already have a couple team members in place but need to secure those other ones, then that makes a huge difference as well. So it's there are so many things on the back end. And you're right, like hitting those different genres, like hitting diversity factors, hitting different, like you need a certain amount of artists. Like for BreakOut West, you have to have a certain amount from Alberta and a certain amount from Saskatchewan. And so it's just, there are so many other factors. We have a question on Facebook. I want to read it just because we've never done this before. But it says, so a lot of talk about being nice. I get that, makes sense. Is there ever time to call bullshit, though? Or as artists, are we always beholden to the booking agents or the festival curators?
No, you should call bullshit. This is such a tricky one.
That's why I asked it.
Like calling bullshit on the buyer with respect to what, like that they didn't book you for another reason? I'm just not sure I totally understand.
So I think this is probably referring to when I said, like, if you're in a venue and you're being like, if like the sound guy is like just not listening to you and being harassed, or like, that's the way I take it. I don't think you should call bullshit on people that are there to help you. I think this is kind of a separate conversation. This is like the Me Too movement a bit, but I think that within the music industry, there's obviously a lot of problems, and that they're coming to light now is awesome, but they've existed for a very long time, and they continue to exist because people are afraid of speaking out. And I think one of the best things, if you're an artist and you don't have a team in place and you feel like you're vulnerable by speaking out, the best thing that you can do is find someone who can speak out for you, whether this be anonymously, whether this be through a third party. I think finding someone that can speak out for you is very important, because these issues do need to come to the forefront. But I do also understand that when you're an artist who doesn't have a team in place and you start speaking out against people, you become a squeaky wheel, or a square wheel, or whatever it is. A squeaky wheel, and that in itself can impede your future. You know, if people think that you're problematic. And I don't think that, this is like, this can go on
Kind of
for...
loaded. Well, I mean, I like what you said is find somebody, I guess, to talk to. Like, you have people here, like at Manitoba Music, and there's lots of artists who come in to see me and say, this is the response that I got from this person. Is that normal? Like, and from my background, I can see both sides, and I can tell you if, yeah, don't take that, and that's not okay, and like that's good to know, and here's how you deal with it in a diplomatic way, rather than you as an artist going out and like putting up a Facebook status or and calling bullshit on this festival. And actually, the follow-up question to that question was, or a bullshit festival run by bullshit people. I mean, that happens. I would just say if it's a bullshit festival run by bullshit people, don't apply for it. Why would you want to play that anyways? But yeah, thank you. Like, I actually really like that response. And, you know, sometimes artists need to stick up for themselves or need to get something across. There are people who are on the front lines and they understand the industry very well and they have connections on both sides. And like, I have a big heart for artists because I am one, but I also have a big heart for industry because I am one, and I've been there.
I think, and this is how, like, people have come to me, if like hypothetically, you're an artist and some A&R guy tells you that you should come and play your demos for him in his hotel room at like late at night, find a way of saying, hey, maybe we could do breakfast. I'll bring my cassette player with my album on it, whatever it is, you know, like that is not, it's not right. It just isn't right. And yes, maybe this person could help you with your career, but the likelihood is that he won't. Don't do it.
I agree. Yeah. That's not where it needs to happen. And I would add to that also, if you're at a festival, especially like Showcase Festival where they've brought in industry and they're suggesting that, please tell the organizers.
Always.
Because it goes also to your point with the sound guy not listening to you, or if someone's making you feel inappropriate or feel uncomfortable, please tell the organizers. I would hate to find out after the fact that an artist was put in an uncomfortable position that I didn't know about, because I can send that person home, and I'm happy to, because it's not okay.
And that news gets around. I mean, especially women in the music industry, like, stick together pretty hard. We have Facebook groups. We know who the people are, you know, like, if just go to one of, I know obviously like there's always at least one woman at a festival working. So if you don't feel comfortable going to a man about something like this, but go, and if it's a man harassing you and you're a dude, you should also, or if it's a girl harassing you and you're a dude, like, this is on both sides. If you're being harassed, period, find someone you feel comfortable talking to. If you don't want to outright, talk about it, find someone that you can trust, that you can go to, and they're gonna, they're gonna do what they can. And even if it's not like a public thing, it's gonna get around in some way. Someone's gonna find out, and so just know that people are trying to make this better.
Definitely. We have a couple questions. I'm going to start with Jacob, and then I'll go to you.
When you're like showcasing at a festival, people always talk about like working the room, or like having someone to work the room while you're playing. I was just wondering if you guys had some best practices if you don't have someone to work the room for you as an artist that's showcasing.
Always, I guess, like, one of the things is always just be like, hey, I'm going to be standing here. Like, I'd love to talk to you after the show. I think that working the room, I think it depends, but like at a showcase, working the room is a little different, because depending on the type of event it is, some people are maybe coming to just see you, and they're going to dip out 5 minutes before you end to get to a venue down the street to see another band. So the working of the room has to maybe happen not in that room. This has to be before, it has to be after, it has to be emails that were sent in the, like, a month in advance, 2 weeks in advance, whatever it is. It needs to be like that you met them at the one-on-one sessions, whatever it is. I think a lot of the working of the room needs to happen outside of the room, because once you get into the room, it's focus on your performance. That's always the number one. But the likelihood is that you're not the only person this person is here to see. So they might be dipping out. If they do stay, you know, like buy them a drink, talk to them, get them interested in you. And
Yeah.
I was just if you send out an email inviting someone 3 weeks after and you don't know if they were there, you know, you're more than welcome to like the next day or the next week, whatever. Like, hey, were you able to catch the showcase? Like, it's, you know, that follow up is always welcome.
Okay, I'm going to grab one more question here.
This is kind of a follow-up of Jacob's question, but for you guys at festivals and showcases, what do you notice in certain traits and characteristics of the more successful artists that do experience relative success or bookings out of the showcase or after the festival, kind of get asked back sort of thing?
I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to music and connecting with people. I think, you know, whether it's an industry showcase, whether it's a festival for an audience, how that artist and that audience connect is everything, right? Like, that's what makes or breaks an artist's career. That's what allows any artist to grow from, you know, we're playing in a small cafe to playing large venues. No one plays a theater that can't connect to a theater full of people, right? No one sells out the West End Cultural Center without being able to connect with 400 people in that room, right? And so I think, so for me, that always comes down to that connection between the artist and the audience. And so I think that, you know, music is a broad thing, right? You can, you know, if you have an act that is, you know, standing on your head and tapping your tummy, and you got 400 people that love it, like, and they're going to pay to see it in 20 cities around the world, amazing, go for it. You know, if you're a folk act, if you're a rock, like, it doesn't matter what kind of music you play. It is entirely about that relationship with the audience, and that's where growth happens. Yeah, you can have all the marketing in the world, you can have all the industry team in the world. We've all seen bands with lots of industry teams and piles of money thrown behind them that just didn't end up connecting and didn't go as far as anyone probably wanted them to. So it's, at the end of the day, it's, at least for me, it's always that relationship. Yeah.
I would agree. I think also when you look at a lot of festivals we talked about, a lot of them will give you more than one play. So if your first show has like 5 or 10 people in the audience, play that show as if the room is packed, because those 5 or 10 people having a great time at your show are going to tell another 5 or 10 people another one, and your next show might be even more. So no matter how big your audience is, just play your best show. Because I mean, we had I keep using examples. We had one show last year where it was an earlier show in the night, and the artist was a hip hop artist, and I popped into the show, and there were only a handful of people in the room. But one of them was the buyer for New School Rules, who was losing her mind over this artist because they were so incredible. And it didn't matter that the room wasn't full; they were just giving it. And she booked them that night. She's like, "You're getting an invite," and then told a bunch of people about them. So I didn't actually make it to their second show, but I understand it was more. So so no matter what your audience is, like, just give it like your whole. And I think probably you all do. I mean, that's a general rule in any show, but especially if you've got more than one within the same showcase.
Very good advice. We are getting close to the end here. Are there any other questions for our panelists? Yes. Give me one sec.
I'd just like to know, like, I know how BreakOut West generally works, like 8 artists per province or whatever, but I'm like, what's how do people go about booking M for Montreal, especially like for Western artists?
So M for Montreal books a lot of Montreal acts and Quebec acts, obviously, but we also have partnerships with Manitoba Music. I think Manitoba Music comes every year with like a group of artists.
Almost, we didn't go this past year, but yeah.
I know Sask Music does, And I think if you send your music into M for Montreal and it lights Mikey up, and maybe you follow up, maybe you've met him before, he's going to be at CMW. Maybe if you're at CMW, try meeting Mikey. I guess, you know, Mikey's a personable guy. If you meet him, he's lit. Yeah, like, I think again, it's a connection game, and it's about your music, it's about where you're at, and it's about how you've connected with the people who would potentially book you. So yeah, I mean, M for Montreal does have like a quota for Canada. Again, also it's a breakdown of that, so we can only book a few people out of like the whole. But yeah, I think I would just say keep trying and keep meeting and keep being nice and keep working hard and just be smart. I don't know. Just
it's a long game.
Yeah, it is a long game.
Nothing happens quickly.
No, most artists, like, who, I mean, they spent 4 years slogging away. I feel like it's very rare that you get one of those artists that has one of those quick 1-year turnarounds. It's just not common. The reality is that, oh my God, I mean, Cigarettes After Sex, like, they were making music for 10 years and no one was listening. And now they're selling out 2 nights at, like, you know, 5K venues.
And that's not like 10 years in a basement. That's like 10 years of like actively pushing as hard as you can, being broke. Never having free time ever. Like, that's
the thing is that you gotta really love this, because the reality is harsh. The reality is that there's not as much music as there is music. There's not as much money as there is music. The reality is that, and it's harsh, but so is the world.
All right, one more question here.
If you have an act that has previously showcased at the festival, at a showcase-based festival, when typically is the turning point where you would maybe pay them as a headliner? Like, what does that moment look like for somebody in a showcase festival?
For BreakOut, for example, we up until last year didn't have any headliners for our festival. Last year we started because we realized there's a significant value in making sure that those rooms are full for all the other bands, and that's really the goal in those headliners is let's find someone who's going to draw the audience so that all those bands that night have a great audience. So for me, it's really, I mean, if we're in a market, because we move every year, if we're in a market that your band can sell out a 300-person venue, and then it probably doesn't make sense for you to showcase in that venue, but you may see value in being part of the event anyway, because you maybe are targeting one of those, or some international delegates or buyers, right? So for me, we always look, with the few headliners we do book, it's only about 4 or 5 right now, and we'll see how that goes in the future, but we want to make sure, we want to know that you have a draw in that audience, so that in that market, so that you are going to fill the room for the benefit of all the artists on that bill, and that you still have a goal, so that you're not going to, parachute in and leave. That you there's still something you can also get out of it. And we mostly, because we just started doing this last year, it's mostly curated. But I'm 100% open to people saying, hey, you know what, you're in a market that I do really well in, so I didn't apply to showcase this year, but I'm really interested in getting into the Australian market, and I noticed you're having a bunch of industry. Like, would you consider me for a highlight show? 100%. I'd look at that, and really that's what it comes down to. Is we want to make sure that it's the full package, but still a good fit with the festival, because even within those few shows that we have as headliners, we want to make sure they're still getting something out of it too. So.
Okay.
And I'll just quickly speak to headliners just in the regular festival format, in that it's entirely based on draw, your ability to sell tickets, right? So, pretty much any headliner offers, no one gets that spot if they can't, if we can't make that money back on their fee, right, at the end of the day. So
I feel like at the end of the day, if you haven't sold out a show with a certain amount of people, you're probably not ready to headline. If you haven't headlined before. So.
Okay. We're out of time, so I would like to thank Mike Falk and Oriane Rosner and Robyn Stewart for being here today. I feel like we could talk about this for so much longer, but we won't. I think we all got some great info from that. Just a reminder that there are some surveys that I would love for you to fill out.